Okay, welcome back to our module series, Applying Positive Psychology and Other Helpful Strategies to the Well-Being of Child Welfare Workers. I'm Amy Krentzman.
And I'm Toni Tinetti.
And Module 2 is entitled Filling Your Watering Can. Okay, our agenda for this module is gratitude, behavioral activation, positive activity scheduling, and then a strategy for putting it to use, a concrete strategy for putting the research evidence from these approaches to wellness to use in daily life. So we'll start with gratitude. Gratitude is an interesting construct. It's quite complex and dynamic. First of all, it has religious roots. The great world religions have gratitude at their center. Gratitude is also of scholarly interest to philosophers, religious scholars, psychologists, and social workers. It's important to understand the basic constructs related to gratitude. First, there have been gratitude practices developed. Now, a gratitude practice would be systematically paying attention to what is going right. It would be something intentional, and it would be a behavior. Gratitude practices should lead to what they call state gratitude. State gratitude is an emotion that attends an experience of thankfulness for, appreciation of, or recognition of something positive. State gratitude would be an emotion. It would be fleeting and temporary. So if someone did a gratitude practice, such as making a gratitude list, they might momentarily feel the emotion of gratitude. Finally, it's important to discern another dimension of gratitude, which is trait gratitude. This is a life orientation toward noticing and appreciating the positive. This you can think of as a way of being. People who have high trait gratitude feel state gratitude more frequently, with a greater intensity, and as the result of a wider range of prompts. The research is mixed on the subject of whether more frequent state gratitude over time will lead someone to have higher trait gratitude, but there is some evidence for that. Now, how can gratitude be helpful in daily life? Well, gratitude has been positively associated with some good things. It's been positively associated with growing or benefiting from a negative event, positive mood and happiness, a style of coping with problems that's helpful, including getting help from others, actively trying to solve the problem, making the best of the situation by viewing it in a positive light or growing from it. Gratitude has been negatively associated with psychopathology and substance abuse, coping with problems in ways that are less helpful, including substance abuse, denial, self-blame, withdrawing, and giving up, negative mood, envy, materialism, worry, frustration, anxiety, and fear, and burnout and other measures of employee well-being. Gratitude practices have been developed and tested in randomized control trial for their effect on well-being. One gratitude practice is called the 3 Good Things exercise. That's where on a daily basis a person writes down 3 good things that happened and what made them happen. Another gratitude practice that's been tested in the research literature is the making of a gratitude list, writing down 5 things you're grateful for on a daily basis. There's also been the testing of a gratitude letter, where you write a letter to someone who's been good to you, and the gratitude visit when you see them face to face and read them that letter. So these practices have been tested in the research literature, and the research literature has shown that these practices have been associated with well-being related outcomes, such as positive physical health, happiness, life satisfaction, better sleep, increased feelings of optimism, and increases in positive affect or positive mood and decreases in negative affect or negative mood. So therefore, the research supports that gratitude is associated with positive factors that can lead to increases in well-being. We'll be building on this at the end of the module.
So now we're going to highlight something called behavioral activation and positive activity scheduling. Behavioral activation is a brief structured treatment that aims to activate clients in specific ways to increase rewarding experiences in their lives. This was created for treatment of depression, and it's based on assumptions that some people are unable to find pleasure from their environments, and that results in the signs and symptoms of depression. It also assumes that depression consists of actions, thoughts, and emotions that have been learned and that can therefore be unlearned. At the heart of behavioral activation is activity scheduling. This involves an assessment of the frequency and enjoyment of existing activities that someone's doing in their life, and then a plan to increase the number of pleasant activities that one's doing. And this really promotes acting from the outside in, which we'll explain in a moment. This means that you're increasing your activity level as a means to improving your mood. So the increase in activity level has to come first. And this kind of shows how that would work. So you do activities that lead to positive emotions. Those positive emotions lead to an increase in well-being. That then makes you more motivated to do positive activities, and in this way the cycle can continue. Activity scheduling can involve multiple types of activities. They can be pleasant and meaningful interactions with others, things that are related to competence, direction, or purpose in your life, or any other activity associated with positive emotions, such as the gratitude exercises that Amy was just talking about. There are two types of activities to consider when scheduling activities. Type A are obligatory and necessary. They could be either neutral or unpleasant, but they're never pleasant. Type B activities, on the other hand, are always enjoyable. They may also be obligatory and necessary, but you still are finding pleasure from them. And when scheduling your activities, the goal is to find a balance between the Type A and Type B activities in your daily schedule. There has been quite a lot of research on activity scheduling and its clinical impact. In a study involving older patients, physical activities and other things associated with socializing and family themes improved their depression scores. In another study involving HIV-positive participants, their depression and mood were improved when they used activity scheduling to rediscover things that they had previously enjoyed. In two separate studies, activity scheduling was found to be as effective as cognitive therapy, and this included follow-up measures at up to 6 months. And home healthcare patients experienced decreased depression and an overall satisfaction with a treatment that included activity scheduling as the main component. So what this research is telling us is that there's a growing body of evidence showing that positive activity scheduling and other happiness-increasing strategies increase one's well-being. And what we can conclude from this is that this can really be used by anyone. Regardless of your clinical symptoms, you can find improved happiness and improved well-being. So while it was created for people with depression, you don't need to have depressive symptoms in order to gain from a positive activity scheduling. There's been some research done on ways to maximize the benefits of activity scheduling. So some things to keep in mind for the activity itself. Doing too much or doing something for too long can decrease the pleasure. Increasing the variety of the types of activities that are performed will keep them enjoyable for longer and decrease monotony and boredom. Perceiving social support in the activity results in greater improvement in well-being. So doing something with a friend might result in more positive gains. And then things related to the person doing the activity, having higher motivation, and this happens when you fit the activities to the goals and personal beliefs and values of the person doing them. to increase their motivation. The more effort that's put into a positive activity, the higher the gains in well-being will be. And then making sure that the cultural values really fit to the activity being performed. In some cultures, personal gains in well-being are not something that is valued. In those cultures, maybe collective well-being is higher valued, and therefore activities related to that will be more pleasurable and therefore have higher gains in well-being. And this last slide shows kind of how this all fits together. So the performance of the positive activity leads to positive emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, and those are what results in an increased well-being. And then at the bottom, we see the activity features and the person features. So the timing and dosage, variety, and social support of the activity, when that fits really well with the motivation, effort, and culture of the person doing the activity, that will moderate the effect, and it can lead to even higher gains in well-being when that activity is performed.
Okay, so we've spoken about the research base for gratitude, a positive psychology practice with deeper roots in human history, as well as a cognitive behavioral strategies, positive activity scheduling, and behavioral activation. So we can often hear about these good ideas for increasing wellness and well-being, but we might wonder, how exactly do I put this to use in my life? How exactly do I employ this and make it work? So what follows now is a recommendation that we are proposing for a way that people can do a brief daily writing practice that incorporates what we've learned about gratitude and positive activity scheduling and behavioral activation. So I'm going to be describing that in the next several slides. The activity starts out with a blank journal. So you would go to your local bookstore, you would buy a journal with empty pages, or maybe you have one at home, and you'd open it up to the beginning spread. So each daily writing practice happens over a 2-page spread. Both the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the pages are blank. As we look at the open book, the line down the middle, the seam where the 2 pages meet, represents the present moment. On the page to the left, we're going to be doing a structured writing practice where we look back over the past 24 hours and examine what has happened and also reconcile the events of the past 24 hours. On the right-hand side of the page, we're going to look forward to the upcoming 24 hours, and we're going to include some elements of various aspects of life that we would like to include in the upcoming 24 hours. And we believe this practice that we're about to describe will help increase gratitude and all the benefits, and increase behavioral activation and positive activity scheduling and all the attending benefits, as well as having some additional benefits as well. So the writing practice is contained within these 2 pages, and it is guided by a series of column headings under which we'll make some lists, some brief lists, and will contain the whole activity to this open page spread. On the left-hand side of the page, the topics are positive. Here's where you will list all of the positive things that you can think of that happened in the past 24 hours. Also negative. Here you will list all of the negative things that have happened over the past 24 hours. It's important to include both dimensions of life, both aspects of life, understanding that life is a combination of positive and negative feelings and events, that's the broad palette of daily life. We wouldn't really be able to condense life into only positive things that happen, but we can work with the stuff in the negative column in helpful ways that we will describe. Finally, a column entitled Thanks. Here's where we generate a gratitude list, a list of things we're grateful for. The next column on the left-hand side of the page is Wishes, and I'll be explaining a little bit more about that, but in this column, you would include people who you feel could benefit from your good intention and your good wishes. This could be people you know who are ill, who've just had a surgery, who are going through a hard time. This is a place to list those people who could benefit from some good, positive energy. There's another way we're going to be talking about the wishes column and the way that it can help us with things that pop up in the negative column, and I'll get to that in just a little while. On the right-hand side of the page, we really just want to include some diverse categories that represent different aspects of life. First will be work. This is the column related to the job. Then there'll be household, the things we have to do at home to keep the household running. Health, on a daily basis, there will be things that we want to do to maintain good health. Spirituality, for those for whom spirituality is a relevant category. This might include spiritual practices that you'd like to include on a daily basis. Social would include social activities, things that you would enjoy interacting with others. Inner child is a category that's very helpful to examine on a daily basis. Let me explain a little bit about what we mean by this. You might have heard this term previously. We're adults and we have adult responsibilities. There's always important things we have to see to on a daily basis that are very serious, that are important for all of the people who rely on us and for us to rely on ourselves. But deep down inside, there's that, if you will, this inner child who has all kinds of ideas about how to spend the day that have to do with having fun and increasing joy and increasing pleasure. So it can be very interesting, we have found, to say to yourself, what does my inner child, that playful inner self, what does she want to do today if she had her choice? And it can be very interesting to see what you think of when you ask yourself that question and when you write it down under this column heading. Another really interesting column heading on the right-hand side is the idea of repair. And that's something else that can help us with things that appear on the negative column on the left-hand side. Before we go on, I want to mention that the column headings on the right-hand side can certainly vary based on your own interests, what you have going on in your life. Certainly spirituality won't be a column heading for everyone. I know a friend who includes the column heading of training because she's going to start to train for a marathon. Someone else might have school if they're in school. So these columns will vary and are tailored to your own life, and you're welcome to choose columns that work for you. Let's talk a minute now about how wishes and repair, those two columns on the left and on the right, can be used to address things that come up for us under the negative column. You may notice, if you try this for several days, that in the negative column there'll be people who pop up in that column. It can be very interesting to take those people and then include them under the wishes column in certain ways that we'll be talking about. Under repair, you can also examine things in the negative column and see if there's any action that needs to be taken for those negative things to be addressed so they don't get worse, or any amends that need to be made, or things that need to be set right from what happened in the past day. So let's look at what some examples under each column might be, just so you have a feel for what we're talking about. Under positive, you might include that when you stepped out this morning, you happened by accident to step out just as the light of day was dawning and the sky was a super interesting deep color purple that was really beautiful and gave you a lift. Under positive, you might also include that you're reading a book right now that's giving you a lot of pleasure. You might include that at the gym, you had a friendly, spontaneous exchange with other people in the locker room that really gave you a sense of belonging. You might include that in the past 24 hours, you heard from a friend who you had been worried about and that all is well with her and all is well between the two of you. Under negative, what that might look like, maybe you were late for a meeting and you felt bad about it. You felt a tremendous amount of work pressure on this day. You felt tired and depleted. Your throat feels like it's getting sore. You're worried maybe you're getting sick. and a colleague who you work with is leaving and you feel sad about that. Thanks would be maybe gratitude for the home that you live in, the friends that you have, your sisters, your wonderful sisters, and your good health. So here's where we can look under wishes. So any people who pop up in the negative or even in the positive category can then be included in the wishes category. So you might include your colleagues who were at that meeting that you arrived at late. You might include your coworkers and your clients who you saw that day. You might include yourself, and you might include that colleague who is leaving and the people at the gym who were so friendly. Now, one thing you can do once you include them in the wishes column, you can include some practices that you can easily find on the internet for compassion or for loving kindness. So compassion practice, if you were to Google compassion practice, you would find a number of things to choose from. Here is one that we especially like. Just like me, this person is seeking happiness in his or her life. Just like me, this person is trying to avoid suffering. Just like me, this person has known sadness, loneliness, and despair. Just like me, this person is seeking to fulfill his or her needs. Just like me, this person is learning about life. You may prefer a loving kindness meditation to the people on this list, and you can Google that and find many examples. This is a repetition of a phrase or several phrases for each person. May you be happy. May you be healthy and strong. May you be filled with ease. So either of those strategies, the compassion or the loving kindness strategy for these people on the wishes list, or anything else that works for you. Under health, on the right-hand side, you might put down that you want to make sure to drink enough water today, that you want to exercise, that you want to get 8 hours of sleep, and that you want to make that medical appointment that you intended to make. Your inner child might need a new pair of slippers. She might want to return to that great book you're reading. She might want to buy a ticket to the theater or have a bubble bath or somehow manage to take a nap today. So in conclusion, we hope that this writing practice will be a way for you to do 2 gratitude exercises, that is, recounting all the positive things that happened in the previous day and making a gratitude list, and therefore you can benefit from those gratitude practices, as well as on the right-hand side of the page, be able to schedule both those things that have to get done for life to work well, as well as to be able to really make sure that you include in every single day some activities that bring you joy, as well as activities that will ensure your good health and wellness. This concludes Module 2.